All right. Good morning, grade 11s, or good afternoon, whenever you're watching this. Okay, let's continue on. Let's try to make this fast so this isn't a monster video. So we're talking about cells. You guys have been answering some questions about cells. Cell walls, things like that. It's features of cells. So we remember we talked about there were eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells. Those are two very important words. So eukaryotic means that the cells have membrane-bound organelles, and most importantly, a nucleus. So if you look at these cells under a microscope, which you guys might be doing, you're looking for a nucleus. And so these are plant cells, animal cells. These are eukaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells are the ones that don't have a nucleus. They don't have membrane-bound organelles. They're not as efficient. They rely on diffusion of things moving through them via diffusion. They don't have compartmentalization. So what you'll find is that prokaryotic cells, because things are moving through diffusion, they're limited in their size. So they're much smaller than eukaryotic cells. Bacteria cells are smaller than our cells. Our cells can grow bigger, but not as big as plant cells. So plant cells are the biggest. Animal cells are in the middle. Plant cells are the biggest. And the reason is plant cells can grow bigger. If you were here in the classroom, I'd be like, why do you think? And then you guys would sit there really quietly for a really long time, just sort of staring off into space. And then I would tell you that it's because they have a cell wall and they need to store stuff in, right? The cell wall kind of holds the cells up. It gives them structure so they can grow bigger. And they need to store. Remember, they need to store water, they need to store food, and they store it in a vacuole. The vacuoles. Animal cells do have vacuoles. The morning class on Mr. K got confused. He got it confused with something else. Animal cells. There was one class where I told that they don't have vacuoles. That was silly. They do. They just have really small vacuoles. They store water and things in them. But they're plant cells. It's way, way bigger. It's a huge feature of the plant cell. Okay, so that's the differences between the major differences between eukaryotic and prokaryotic. In that those little questions that I said, I asked you to make a Venn diagram, of things that are in between the two things. There's some questions to answer about that. Now, what are some other things? So what do cells do? The main thing cells do, a big thing that cells do, is they obtain nutrients, is getting food, is getting nutrients so that they can take those nutrients in and they can build more cells. And that's basically it. They can grow and make more cells. Grow and make more cells. That's kind of what all cells are trying to do. So nutrients are very important. Getting nutrients is very, very important for cells. So how do cells get nutrients? Well, there's two main groups of cells, how they obtain nutrients. And this is another one of those places where I would be like, what do you think those two main groups are? And then you would sit here quietly. So I'll tell you, it's kind of like animal cells and plant cells. And animal cells are called heterotrophic cells. And so what they do is they can't make their own food. We can't make our own food. I mean, we do make our own food, but our cells don't make their own food. We have to go out and consume, ingest other things, and our cells have to take nutrients in order to survive. And those nutrients break down to it'll be like fats, amino acids, and sugars. Sugars being the most important. Sugars being like the biggest that's the thing that powers the cell, and I think we talk about that in a little bit. So anyways, so heterotrophic cells, they have to take food in. Autotrophic, okay, auto means automatic, means on its own. Autotrophic cells make their own food. They make the food. So that's like plant cells. Plant cells take sunlight, the energy from sunlight, and they turn it into sugars. They turn it into sugar, and then they break that sugar down for energy. It's amazing. And they break that sugar down, or they turn that sugar into more plant. It's amazing. They're incredible. And so you've got autotrophic cells like plant cells. There's another kind called they're autotrophic cells. So plant cells do photosynthesis. And then there's also chemosynthesis. So These are bacteria basically that live deep in rocks, and they don't have anything available to them. They don't have sunlight available to them. There's not a lot of nutrients there. So they've evolved to actually take minerals out of rocks, take the chemistry out of rocks, and turn that into food. And we don't talk about them very much. So some ways, heterotrophic cells, how they bring food in. They have, remember we talked about, they have all the proteins in their membrane, their selectively permeable membrane that can bring things in, let things in. They also do this process called phagocytosis, okay? And what happens there is the membrane surrounds something. If I can surround something, pretend this thing is something that a cell wants to eat. And here is the cell, and this is just a small part of the membrane. What will happen is the membrane will actually envelop whatever it is and gloop into the cell and become a vesicle inside the cell. And then what happens is then this little thing that is inside the vesicle, then enzymes enter the vesicle and break it up, and then the nutrients are released and can be used by the cell. Another way that heterotrophic cells get food, so that's called ingestion. Another method is absorption. So it's different. Absorption and ingestion are different. And fungus does absorption. And what fungus does is they don't do this. They don't take the stuff in and then inject the enzymes into a vesicle. What they do instead is that's the first thing they do is they shoot out of the cell all the enzymes. They like barf it up like bleh. And the equivalent would be us, instead of eating the food and then digesting it in our stomach, it would be barfing on the food and then digesting the food outside and then sucking it up. Flies do that. Some insects do that. So fungus cells, what they do is they excrete the enzymes into the environment. The enzymes break down the food, break down whatever it is into the nutrients, and then the nutrients can diffuse or be transported by membrane proteins into the cell, or phagocytosed into the cell as well. These types of cells, they really, so heterotrophic cells really are dependent on surface area. They need a lot of surface area. So if you look in our stomachs, for example, the cells lining our stomachs, they've got all these these are called villi. There's these little hairs, so they increase the surface area. So we're absorbing nutrients in the stomach. It helps us absorb things. Anything I want to talk? Okay, so photosynthesis. Here's a little formula for photosynthesis. Look, there's sunlight. It needs this pigment called chlorophyll, and there's many different types. There's different types of chlorophyll. The most common one is chlorophyll A. And what chlorophyll A does is absorbs all the wavelengths of light, and then only green gets reflected. That's why it looks green. And from those wavelengths of light, so light carries energy, and the energy from this light then will be absorbed by electrons basically in the chlorophyll, and it will make the electrons jump to a higher energy state. This is real quantum chemistry stuff. And then when they come crashing down out of that high energy state, that energy when they come crashing down, so basically you got sunlight energy that's absorbed by electrons that get they get super energetic because they've got this energy, and then they release that energy, and when they release that energy, they can cut bonds. They can that energy as they drop down can be used to make new bonds. And to do chemistry. So basically that energy from those electrons is used to make sugar, to bond carbon dioxide and water to make sugar, and sugar is the food. And then there's a little oxygen left over. And so that's why plants need carbon dioxide. That's why you need to water your plants, because they make sugar, they make their food, and that's why they release oxygen that then we breathe. So both bacteria cells can also do photosynthesis. In eukaryotic cells, photosynthesis happens in this organelle called the chloroplast. You can see this is a close-up of a plant cell. You can see the cell wall there. And these green bulbs are the chloroplasts. Okay, I think that might be enough. It's enough for you to do another one of these sheets. I'm going to post it later today. Is this one B3? So just do the first page of that sheet. The second page we'll save for tomorrow. I'll do the notes on that for tomorrow. And then what I think we'll do, tentative plan, is when you come back on Tuesday, we'll do a quiz on all this cell stuff first thing in the morning, and then we'll do a lab, and so you'll get all your marks generated all in one day for this thing. So I'll set that up. I think that's a good plan to do it. Just we're because I didn't know I was going to be teaching you. We're so behind in this thing. Anyways, okay. Hit like so I know you watched this.